Alright, hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're taking a look at the 85-ton Battlemaster 1G Assault Mech. It is, by many accounts, one of the most high-performing, versatile, not super slow assault mechs possible in the inner sphere. It's certainly always a favorite of mine, though as I'm sure you guys can point out by now, there are some problems here, particularly for the elongated campaign missions that we often find ourselves taking part in. First and foremost would be our under tonnage armor, I suppose, particularly noticeable on the rear arc of this mech. Although, I will say at 4-7 movement we won't always be closing behind the enemy. It is still something that I think we should think about because of things like AoE attacks, artillery in particular. That is very common in the BTA 3062 mod. So the first thing that we're going to start off doing is just ripping out all of these standard heat sinks, all of these standard medium lasers. Now my intention here is, like with our previous refits, to preserve, if we can, the original intended role of the mech, simply making it more effective. And to that end, we are actually going to start off by replacing the PPC with something a little bit interesting. We're going to be putting on not one, but two Clan Ultra Autocannon 5s. So it's a different take, it's ballistic instead of energy, but we do preserve the very long range capabilities with Ultra AC5s instead of Ultra AC10s, going up to 640 maximum range, while PPC has 720. It is a bit longer. We do save a lot on our heat output. Well, I guess we save a little. Well, not really. I mean, both of these firing at double will be 60 heat, so that is actually running decently hot. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do something a little bit crazy. We're going to put one ER medium in the arm, 3 ER mediums in each torso, and that is an absolute ton of laser fire here. We're also going to max our armor. We're going to ignore the fact that it says that we're overweight here at the moment, and throw in a Clan XL engine, then go over to our Arma, and throw in Ultra Ferro. For those of you who aren't quite sure how to get Ultra Ferro in BTA 3062, it is in fact a faction reward. You can, just so you're aware, go onto the BTA 3062 wiki, and that will show you everything you need to see, everything you need to know about where to find particular faction store type pieces of equipment. I do believe this is from the Davion, so Federated Suns faction store. So this gives us 16.5 free tons. That 0.5 is a problem because it'll show up as we're under tonnage. So we're going to go ahead and put a light tag over the side. And the rest of this we need to actually fill up with some way of making this heat efficiency go away. So first thing we can do is we can throw in a Clan Heatsink Kit. So that helps a little bit, but not a ton. And the interesting thing here is we actually benefit a lot from heat exchangers, and I'll tell you why. Instead of the blanket -6 per standard heatsink kit, the heat exchanger does -10%, -15, -20, depending on the grade of the heat exchanger, and we're shooting right now at 150, but that's on the single fire mode for Ultra AC5s, because the standard Alpha Strike heat calculation, and indeed damage calculation, does not take into account multiple fire modes very well. At least it doesn't for racks. It might for Ultra Autocannons. I don't think it does. We could calculate it out, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. So if that is the case, we could be tacking on an additional 30 heat here, firing up to about 179 heat on a single Alpha Strike, which means that cutting off 10% of that with 2 tons would take out 18 heat instead of the 12 that we could get with 2 tons from a standard heatsink instead of something like an exchanger. So we do in fact want the best exchanger we can get. Probably going to do the exchanger plus. It's 4 tons, gives us -20% weapon heat generated. Can only put one exchanger on the mech, and it is also worth looking at an improved heat bank, because for 1.5 tons, just 3 slots, we can get -12 heat at the end of turn. And I think actually we're going to take off the tag and we're going to throw in an improved heat bank. Now there is a drawback here. This -12 does not show up on our heat efficiency chart. So for example, if we were to slightly overheat with this mech, or apparently slightly overheat with this mech. We wouldn't actually. It's really kind of irritating unless you remember precisely which mechs you have improved heat banks on at the end of turns. You go, wait, oh, it's telling me I'll overheat, then you don't. Or you turn off guns because you think it'll overheat, then, well, you didn't have to. But let's go ahead and stack in a couple more heat sinks now that we have most that we can do right now in terms of fancy ways to drop that heat level. So another thing that we need to do for this rebuild is we need to stack in some ammunition. Ultra Ferro also does come with Case 2, which reduces internal ammo explosions to only 3 points of damage, localized to the place where the explosion takes place. It basically neutralizes the risk factor from an ammunition explosion, and I think what we need here for these Ultra AC5s, so one volley set on double will give us 4 shots, right? So if we go down here to our ammunition for Ultra AC5s, one bin gives us 15. So we get 3 3/4 shots from, well, full volleys from every ammunition bin every time. So that's 3 3/4. This will be, math is hard, 7.5. Piling on enough to get 14 is probably over, well, to get 15 round volleys is probably overkill. We can add, I think, a 3rd bin, and then, well, if we look at our heat efficiency, 108 is not phenomenal. Assuming that we're ripping 10 off and we have an additional 12, actually, so right now it says our alpha strike and our heat sinking should match, because keep in mind, the heat sinking of 108, you add 12 to it from the improved heat bank, and on a neutral environment, that's alpha strike of 120, heat sinking 120, but that's the single fire mode for the Ultra AC5, so we can tack on not an additional 30, but instead an additional, this drops 20%, so an additional 24. So right now we're 24 in the red. If we tack on 2 additional heat sinks, we'd be 12 in the red, firing everything. But that isn't at a sprint. So probably would be best. I mean, if we run out of the Ultra AC5 ammunition, which would take some doing, mind you, we still have 7 ER medium lasers that we can get online here. So I'm pretty happy with this amount of firepower. So you know what? Let's get a little bit overcooled, potentially. Ooh, I don't have the free tonnage. Oh, okay. Well, here's another thing we can do. We can go into our cockpit, and we can use an FCS Advanced TC to drop that last ton. So we're not quite overcooled, but we're pretty close. We have an FCS Advanced TC, allows us to have our own pick for our breaching shot, or, well, more as is more likely, targeting specific locations during precise strikes, because I don't think we'll ever really be firing with just one weapon here. Even just one of the Ultra AC5s is really not phenomenal enough to really make use of that breaching shot that you want to be using on things like, oh, I don't know, a Rack 5 or a Gauss rifle or an improved heavy Gauss rifle, things like that. So the intention with this Battlemaster is actually to take the place of our Atlas. So this will hopefully be going to Announcer sooner rather than later. I think the Atlas is just too slow. It does move at, I believe, 4.6, so this is barely an improvement, but it is an improvement. It also gives us a little bit more resilience here with our armament, both in terms of having extra reliable range with the Ultra AC5s, a little bit less struggle from recoil, but also giving us these nice 7 ER mediums that we can get firing to replace the somewhat unpredictable damage from the 2 ER mediums on the Atlas, as well as that double LRM-20, which I used to be quite enamored with, but it's just the Atlas has been underperforming as of late. So this is our build for right now. Maybe some things to think about would be having a larger engine core, going a little bit faster. If we can even push this to 5.8, that's pretty nice. Even 5.7, 5.8. Yeah, actually, I wonder, just to take a look here real quick, what size core will we need to get that a little bit extra movement? So if we try a 350, does that improve our movement any? So nope, 4.7 goes to 4.7. I don't really have the finest resolution here in terms of engine cores. I do sell these quite often for the money. 375 would get us moving at 5.7. Actually, we're pretty efficient there in terms of our engine core. What I mean by that is particularly for the larger mechs, there's a range of engine cores where you'll get the same rounded movement out of it. And I say rounded movement because um, if you're just like Mech Warrior 5 and you could change the engines there, which I don't think you currently can, you'd get actually a very fine-tuned difference on your max speed. You'd get, plus or minus a couple of kilometers per hour as your max speed. Here, all of that gets rounded to a tile rating because we don't exactly have a 64.7 kilometers per hour translation other than X number of tiles. So we're on the lower end of what gives us 4.7. Pretty efficient. I like it. 3.1 million C-bills for the refit. Could be better, could be worse, but I don't think that'll really sink us too badly here. And that should do for this refit. So thank you guys for hanging around, and we'll see you again real soon.